All right. So welcome back to the Bluecollar Bodybuilding podcast, everybody. Today we're diving into something a little different, but something I feel is incredibly important, especially in the world of bodybuilding where there's so much left unsaid. If you followed me for a while, you'll know that we don't shy away from some of the hard stuff, and today's episode is exactly that. We're going to talk about addiction, recovery, and how this sport we all love can be a powerful tool for healing. As someone who's personally walked that path and is in recovery myself, I know firsthand the role that bodybuilding can play in pulling someone out of the darkest moments of their lives, which is exactly what happened to myself. And then there's a lot of us in this sport that's been dealing with pain, trauma, addiction, and too often we think that we're alone, which makes that journey quite difficult. So that's why I started doing these conversations in the past, and I'm just starting to pick up on doing them again to give us a little bit of space to be real and kind of show how you can fall, get back up, and still build something incredible at the same time and really find your place. But today, my guest is someone that I've got a ton of respect for. Jackie's coach, Dr. Karina Dotson, is not only a respected bodybuilding coach and a doctor, but she's someone who's overcome addiction and turned her life around in a massive way. Her story is powerful and her insight is honest, and I'm really excited to dig into that with her today. Dr. Karina, thank you for hopping on, and appreciate you hopping on and getting this conversation rolling. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Super excited to be on the channel. I've watched a lot of your videos with like other people that you've interviewed. And then I just saw that your short recently, the cardiovascular one, seemed to be like pretty well received. But I love your content. Obviously, I love you and Jackie. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to be on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I did a video I just released a little while back, which I thought was a worthy topic, which I'm sure we'll get onto one of our podcasts down the road, was a little bit about elevated heart rate and kind of the risk and how to really look at that when it comes to the GLP ones that have become so popular today. So I thought that was actually fun. There was a lot of good little snippets I wanted to throw together. Appreciate that. But so yourself, like me, it's a weird conversation, to be honest, sometimes jumping into, and sometimes it's a vulnerable thing to talk about. But you said you were willing to tell us a little bit about your story, and kind of, I really respect where you are today. I hold you very highly. I put my wife in your hands and trust you to take care of her during her journey. And when you and I became friends, we both kind of shared a little bit about ourselves and realized we both kind of struggled with some difficult adversity in the past and really pulled ourselves out of it, made something out of ourselves, which I'm proud of to hear for yourself. And I'm proud of myself to have done that. So I guess I'll just kind of start off by maybe you can tell me a little bit about the background, about a little bit about your past, some of the tough times you've gone through, and when did you realize, one question I always kind of like to start off with is, when did you first realize that your relationship with substances was becoming destructive and becoming an issue for you?
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation. And I'm a very open and transparent person. There's not really any subjects that I won't talk about. And if anything in like my story can help people, we were talking about this earlier, that just having conversations with people in the bodybuilding space, there's a lot of us that struggle with addiction or have like addiction or substance issues in our past. And so being able to talk to people that can relate and have overcome it, it's a cool little community within a community. Yeah, I really appreciate this topic. But I think as of like how I got started drinking. So like my main thing was like always alcohol. Like alcohol was like my best friend. Alcohol like fixed me. And I always say that substances are really just like symptoms of the problem, right? And my problem is I never felt like I fit in. I always felt like something was off. I felt like isolated or depressed or like something wasn't right about me, or I have an addictive personality, and like anything that changed the way that I felt, alcohol, drugs, and to an extent like training, right? Like it feels really good to train, and it's just like a kind of a healthier outlet. But the same thing with like training is like I don't do anything half-ass. And so it's like when I got into bodybuilding, it was like really just like balls to the wall, like all in. And that's just my personality. But yeah, and I started drinking at a pretty young age. I don't know. I actually don't know what's considered young. I started drinking, I think, when I was like 13. Is that young?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so.
It's pretty
I
young.
think most people that kind of have struggled find out that it's definitely a little bit before high school time, but everyone's different, you know.
Yeah. So I think that I never drank like a normal person. Like I didn't have, sometimes I'll talk to people that had the experience of being able to control their drinking for like, a couple years and then like it all fell apart in like college or something, or it progressively got worse. And it just really wasn't like that for me. The very first time that I started drinking, it was holy shit. Like I found this holy grail and I fucking loved the way that it made me feel. And I drank like pretty much like all day, every day until I was like 20 years old. And that's when I got sober. So I've been sober for 12 years off of alcohol, all mind altering substances. I, yeah. And yeah, so I got sober when I was like 20. And then I think your question, do you want me to talk like a little bit about what that was like, or you want to talk about
Yeah, why don't you?
what?
Yeah, kind of what if you had to pinpoint what, because everyone's got a reason. Nobody just jumps into abuse of the drugs usually without a reason. There's some sort of, like myself, it was really that it was my numbing tool for me to escape daily so I could work 100-hour weeks. And just, I lived on my own since I was 16. I had a troubled past, and alcohol was something that just put my problems at bay temporarily, even though I was still waking up to them every morning. But that was my, not coping tool, but that was my escape. So I could work, I could beat the hell out of myself and then get some sort of release at the end of the night. What was it for you? That was it the partying factor, or was there something you're trying to escape, or maybe some sort of thing that just triggered you, I guess you'd said, into an addiction?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it was like the party aspect. I think numbing is a good way to
Yeah.
describe it. I just know like I was like a I don't want to say a weirdo, but I was definitely like an outcast growing up. I think a lot differently than people I've found. My brain works a little differently, and that was really hard. Like growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was a freaking like Paul and I talk about this a lot. Like I was a freaking nerd. I was in like chess club. I was in band. I was just like a lot. I don't want to sound like I thought a lot differently than like my peers, and I was like really isolated. And I think that I grew up like feeling like something was wrong with me, and like drugs and alcohol fixed that. It was a way. I guess it was a way of relating to other people, not necessarily the party, but it was like drinking something social, and it takes that barrier down. And so I felt like I was like more accepted, or I had some type of community like with other people, like when I was drinking or like doing drugs with other people. But then it also just made me feel numb to I think that feeling of like isolation, or like numb to I was really depressed growing up. Like I had a lot of issues with depression, and I come from my dad was pretty abusive. And so I think it just numbed all that, you know? That's
Yeah.
a great word that you used.
Yeah, I think a lot that's some people, like you say, feel isolated, and the drug can be liberating, or it just make them more social, and it gets them out. It gets them something they weren't like getting on their own before. I definitely became more of a social person when I started drinking throughout high school times, and but then down the road, it actually made me more isolated, where all I wanted to do
Yeah.
was become drunk and just stay within my work, stay focused on my goal, because I had this whole snowball effect working when it was working for me. And for myself, I know we want to talk about you, but I'm just trying to relate some of the things. Like I never had like
Yeah.
myself a rock bottom scenario. Unfortunately, nowadays with drugs and alcohol, a lot of the times people don't hit rock bottom. It's death. They
Yeah.
just,
They just
yeah, they never really have a rock bottom. I never got to a point where I couldn't keep the bills paid. I never got to a point where I couldn't put food on the table. I owned my first home when I was 17. My sister co-signed at 20 for her, and we were paying a mortgage still in high school. And so I never had something taken away. I never had a negative that said alcohol's causing you to lose out on
mm,
something. But that always makes me wonder, did you ever have, because a lot of people do have some sort of a rock bottom or some realization that something's wrong, something's off. I look at where I'm at. I got myself into a hole. I can't even pay for the next meal I'm going to have. How am I going to get my drug of choice? Did you ever have a rock bottom yourself?
yeah, I think yes, I had a lot of probably what should have been rock bottoms, and I was really protected from a lot of the consequences of my addiction
Mhm.
by my mom, really, but like by the people around me. My mom's a huge enabler. Love her to death. She enabled the fuck out of my addiction. Whether that was like my mom's also a lawyer, which is really great to have when you're an addict.
Yep.
There was a lot of times that like I got arrested a lot and had a lot of charges, and there were times that like phone call from my mom to the judge would make that get dropped or something. Or she would pay for my fines and stuff. She would let me come back and stay at her house and stuff like that. I think really prolonged things. But my drinking was like truly disastrous, like from day one. I hurt like a ton of people. Like I just did not care. Honestly, all I cared about was like getting drunk and getting high, and I didn't really care who got hurt in the process. And so I burned a lot of bridges and ruined a lot of relationships. I hurt a lot of really close people to me, just like with like dishonesty and stuff. I never stole or like from people or anything like that, but just like truly being like a shitty person to be around and like a terrible friend. And there was a lot of relationships that like I really cared about that I lost, and people were honest with me. I had conversations where people would sit me down after a night of drinking and I would say some stupid shit, or I would break shit, or I would drive drunk, and I drove drunk a lot and crashed a lot of cars. People would have conversations with me about it, about how irresponsible and selfish that is. And those conversations would really mean something in that moment. And then an hour later, I'd be like drinking or getting high again. And I had a lot of moments like that. I had a really bad car accident once when I was drinking and like passed out at the wheel of the car and crashed into the median going 80 miles an hour. And my friend was in the car with me. And that was kind of like a big wake up call. Like I woke up in the hospital, like handcuffed to the bed, and he was okay. But, you know, I could have killed him. I could have killed other people. And that was like a big kind of wake up moment. But I had a lot of those. And there should have been a lot of moments, but I guess there's a couple like instances that like really stand out to me. One of them was that car accident. One of them was, to your point about functioning well and keeping things going. I did fine in high school, and I got a full ride scholarship to U of M, University of Michigan, which is a really good university. And so I was holding it together like most of the time, which made it really easy to convince myself that none of this was an issue. But things got really bad in college.
Which I can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what you were saying. And that's why, like, what you said made me think about that is like, if things are going okay on the outside, it's really easy to convince ourselves that we don't have an issue.
Yeah,
But
when you don't have like a price to pay for things, you don't really understand the value of it. So when you don't get in trouble by the law, you get away with something, you don't realize how close you were to really having a big issue at the time. So that in your mind, there is no issue because there was nothing, no piper to pay at the time. So I can understand that fully. I wasn't one to drink and drive. I just was more of a self-destruct, burning the candle at both ends scenario for myself. Now, you said that your mom, unfortunately, was a little bit of an enabling factor, but did you have, on the other side of the coin, did you ever have a person or an event that really played a pivotal role in helping you turn your life around?
yeah, I think so. Things got really bad. So at one point, I ended up dropping out of school. I like stopped going to classes because I was just like drunk all the time. And then I failed, and then I ended up just dropping out. And my mom wouldn't let me. So I had been living in like university housing, and I didn't have a job. And my mom wouldn't let me come back to stay at her house if I was still drinking. So that wasn't an option. So I ended up just like homeless in Ann Arbor, and I was panhandling for food.
Wow.
So we would do what was called like white boxing. So Ann Arbor's like a big foodie like city. And so we would just wait for people to come by with their leftovers, ask, hey, you're going to throw that away anyway. Can you just give us your takeout box? So we would get food like that. And then like any money that we made from panhandling, like we could spend on like drugs and alcohol. And so I was sleeping in this alleyway in Ann Arbor. And it used to be called Tripper's Alley because it's like this graffiti alley. It was like the whole thing was like just graffitied. It was super cool. I think it's called like Painter's Alley now or something, like more PC or whatever the fuck. But so I was sleeping in this alley and like white boxing and like hanging out with homeless people. I guess I was a homeless person, so we're all hanging out and like doing drugs and stuff. And this kid that I actually went to school with him my entire life. I used to go to school with him. He like walked by one day and he like recognized me, and I'm like, I have to smell so bad. But he was like, is that Karina? Are you? I'm like, hey, what's up? And I think I'm like fucking tripping on ketamine or something at the time. I'm like so fucked up at the moment. But he just sat down and started talking to me. And turns out he'd been sober for 4 years, and he just hung out with me. And he came back like the next day, and like, every day he would just come and sit down and just talk to me.
Wow.
And like somebody that knew me from my past and took the time and was like now had struggled with, so he was like a heroin addict. I didn't do heroin, but and he was like bad heroin addict. And I knew that I kind of watched him go through that. So to see him sober now, that was like a really like pivotal moment for me where it's, oh shit, he had fucked his life up like I currently am doing, and he had turned it around. So maybe I can do that too.
That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
bumping into people later on when you're a little bit messed up. I've been there, done that quite a few times and not realized it till the next day. Can be an embarrassing thing, but those are all little things that kind of add up. You think about down the road, you go, man, what a mess I really was. I'm so happy. I'm better off now. And that's wow. Ketamine.
Yeah.
I didn't know you ended up homeless though. That's the first time I
It,
heard that.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because I don't say that I was homeless because there was always a home I could have gone to. There was just conditions, right? So it was like at any point I could have gone back to my mom's house, but she was like, you cannot do drugs or drink here. So in my head, I'm like, I don't have a home. You know what I mean? Because that wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And so there were always places that I could have gone, but definitely like the number of people that would let me crash on their couch definitely
Yeah.
was going downhill. It was going downhill.
Yeah. Yeah. You start to wear out a lot of welcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand that. Now, what was it? Was there an event or was there a certain point in time where you just things clicked and you decided, hey, I'm just sick of living this way? For like myself, it was realizing there was no end to this. Like I said, I didn't really have many negatives. It was just, I was realizing that the only memories I had when I wasn't blackout drunk was me at work and maybe like at 45
Mm,
minutes of coming home, seeing my wife starting the grill and saying to myself, I'd wake up the next morning, I'd look at my work, I'd look at all my estimates, my billing inquiries, everything that I would send out for my businesses, and they were spotless. They were great. I was like, how do I do this when I'm blacked out? I don't know why. I ended up getting more for jobs most of the time when I was drunk than I was when I was sober. And it was, so I kind of looked at it going, wow, my whole life is just going to end one day. And the only memories I'm going to have at the end of life to look back on is just me at work. And it's because that was the only time I didn't use drugs or alcohol was
mm,
or drink. Yeah, was at work. And I thought to myself that this isn't fair to my wife. This is not who she married, and she stuck by me for the whole time. Jackie and I have been together for 15 years. I've been sober for coming up on 5, but 10 solid years. She watched me
that's
just
awesome.
self implode. And she saw the good parts of me, of course, and then she saw the worst of me, and she didn't go anywhere but try to help. And I wanted more for her, and I wanted more for myself because I knew that I was too hard of a worker. And so that's what triggered me is I just finally said, I want different. I want more. And
Mm,
that addictive personality actually kicked me out of it, saying, I want more. I want more of something
yeah.
better. This isn't enough. This isn't doing the trick any longer. So when did you say that you've had enough, or was there an event that was just like last stand, last scenario, and you decided to get clean?
Yeah, I think there's like kind of two events that jump out to me. So to your point about it's not really working anymore and it like becomes like a rat race, right? Where you're like doing the exact same thing every day and like
Yeah.
at some point you have that like crystallizing moment that's this is miserable and it's never ending. And then that feeling is almost worse because it's like the hopelessness of holy shit, this is good, this is my life. Exactly what you just said. And I like it got to the point where I had really bad DTs, tremors from like alcohol withdrawal. And so I would wake up and like if I didn't start drinking within a half hour of waking up, I'd be like shaking so bad I couldn't like bring water to my mouth. And so every morning I'd walk to the corner store and I'd grab a pint and I would drink the pint on the walk back, and that would stop the shaking long enough for me to pull it together at home and then figure out how I'm going to get more alcohol. And so one time my brother is an alcoholic and in my head he was always like the gold standard of that's what an alcoholic looks like. And one day and he called me and it was like 8 o'clock in the morning and I was on my daily walk back from the liquor store and he's, are you drinking like already? And I'm like, yeah, bro. And he's like, Karina, I think you have a problem. And to hear my brother, who like in my head is he's an alcoholic, tell me that I have a drinking problem, it was like a holy shit moment. Oh fuck.
It's bad when
I
that
think
happens. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're right. So that was like a kind of a big oh shit moment. And then I still got arrested like a couple more times after that. But the one of the last times I was on probation for a DUI and I got arrested with another DUI. And my mom is a lawyer and she represented me in court. And the when I got in front of the judge, like started lecturing me, which I've gotten like a bunch of lectures from judges, but she was like, she was like pointed at me and she's like, basically, you selfish motherfucker. No parent should have to represent their child in court. Like what you're doing to your mother right now, like basically you're a selfish piece of shit. And like you're killing your mom, right? And my mom's like sobbing. And my mom's like composed, right? She's in her like business suit and she's sobbing. And that was like a really like profound moment for me where I'm like, fuck, you're right. I am a piece of shit and I need to get this together. And then I got sober like shortly after that.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I'm sure you've, like, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's been many times in your addiction that you've disappointed or you've hurt your mom or hurt her feelings and made her disappointed in your actions. But that sometimes you find out that there's just one that stings and it does
Yeah.
click. And that's funny you say that because that was exactly what got me thinking that I don't want to live the life I was leading anymore myself. Is I had one night that I got so drunk and I'm in my garage waxing my first hot rod I ever bought myself. And the thing's beautiful. I'm waxing it. I sit down because I'm tired and I'm so drunk. I fall asleep in the garage in the chair. And Jackie comes out and records me just so she could show me the next
Mm,
morning. Look at you, Dave. And I'm
yeah.
about falling over, but I'm waking up and slamming my head against the
Yeah.
guardrail behind me. And I still ain't waking up because I'm so friggin' drunk that even hitting my head on the rail and I could just hear the video. It just sounds like a baseball bat. I'm just like, it was so ugly to me. And it just,
Yeah.
there's been many a nights where it's just like you fall asleep on the couch, you fall asleep looking like a drunk loser, but none of them clicked.
Yeah.
And that one stung. And that one just really hurt. And I just said, that was it. That's not me. Like, I know I deserve better. So it's interesting that how I'm sure you've had many a time. I
Mm,
took that one that just stung and it
yeah.
really hit the right spot. It was like a bullseye. I'm sure that's how it felt to
Yeah.
a point for you.
It is because like I'm sure there was plenty of times that like Jackie called you out or it was like
Yeah,
your behavior's affecting me. And it's for some reason that one time was different.
yeah, many times where I'd say we still live in a beautiful home. We still got it. What do you got to complain about? And it wasn't fair. It wasn't, that's not what she got married to me for, is me. And yeah, that really just, that time stung because I could have spent my time with her. I was being selfish. I could have been bettering myself even further, not just settling for what I had at the time. And so, yeah, it's always interesting to hear what was it that made it click? Because we all know that addicts don't change until they're ready to make a
Yeah.
change. Like you can't force them if they're not quite,
No.
if they got one foot in and one foot out, it never happens. Like my sister's a recovering, is still an opioid addict. And the first time we put her through rehab, the problem was that she wasn't ready. She had one foot in and one
Mm,
foot out, and it just as well as I, that never works. Just 100% of
yeah.
the time never works. So what steps did you take? So you decide that I'm going to get sober. This is enough. I got my wake up call. No, what happens after that? What do you do to hold yourself accountable or make it easy on yourself? Because it's not an easy task, obviously.
Yeah. So originally when I first got sober, I did do 12-step programs, a 12-step program. I was court ordered to go. And basically, I think I like a common theme in my life is I really like community. And I found like a really good group of people there that felt like family for the first time in a long time. And really just latched onto that. I stopped hanging out with the people that I had been hanging out with that weren't doing very well and weren't really aligned with this new life that I was trying to live. And I just found this new community and really dove into that. I did go through a 12-step program and went to meetings for a really long time and then just like focused on the areas of my life that I'd thrown to the wayside. So I ended up going back to school, got a good job and stuff like that, and just tried to focus on. I focus on other people a lot because like it's really hard to feel bad about your shitty life when like you're paying attention to somebody else. So I got really into like service work, like started doing like a lot of volunteer work and stuff like that, and really just tried to. I got into a career where I was like, I want to help people, and in focusing on that, I think a lot of the like selfish aspects of addiction, like they go away, right? Because it's hard. I'm less focused on myself, which I think is like part of the root of what my addiction was, right? Is that I was like pretty selfish and self-centered for a long time.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's probably what down the road made you a good coach, is being able to look forward to relating to people, problem solving, helping them work through difficult tasks, something that you had to learn and use yourself. Yeah, it's definitely like an everyday scenario. That's why I'm glad I found bodybuilding. I had always loved the sport, but I think I had mentioned this to you before, is like addiction and bodybuilding do have a little bit of a parallel with each other where it's a daily responsibility for a long-term goal, just like
Mm,
being, sober is a daily scenario. You battle it sometimes
yeah.
easy, sometimes there's super easy days, sometimes there's tough days, but you're still looking for that long-term sobriety and happiness down the road, really what you're going for. I'm glad that the 12-step program worked for you. I always suggest to people, whatever makes common sense in
Whatever
your head.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, if it sounds like that makes common sense to relate to other people, or maybe like myself, it was I went to detox because I was definitely gonna have seizures with the amount I was
Yeah.
drinking. And so I did a 3-day detox, and then I just decided to do my own programming, which was I hired whether I had something to talk about or not, I hired a therapist I was going to talk to weekly. I put things in place like a breathalyzer at the house. I had full transparency with my wife. I told my entire workforce, all my employees, why I'm going to be missing and that they're free to hold me accountable, as well as my family. I finally let them know I have a serious problem and I want
Mm,
you all to hold me accountable. So I put all these things in place that I thought made sense for me.
yeah.
The 12-step program I thought would have worked for me too, but I thought I wanted to try my own route at first. And
Yeah.
being highly motivated is a huge thing as well.
100%.
So where does fitness come into this part of your life? So you get sober, you've gotten yourself a little bit of a head start of learning how to manage your addiction, and where does fitness come into play?
Yeah, like I have a background in powerlifting. When I was in high school, I was on the powerlifting team. So I've always done sports. Like I played soccer since I was 4 years old, played on a travel team, highly competitive person, and did very well in powerlifting, won states and nationals. And I was really focused on like fitness, like pretty much up until like things got really bad with my drinking. And then that just went to shit. But I just came back to that. Like once I got sober, I was like, what are the things that really matter to me? And I'd always really cared about my body. Like I very much kind of view like my body as like something worth like investing in, right? I care a lot about health span. I care about the nutrition that I put in my body. I care about taking care of my body and like respecting it. And these were like moral tenets that I'd always held but hadn't at all prioritized, right? Quite the opposite during addiction. And so part of like recovery for me was like, okay, I like abused the shit out of my body for however long, 10 or sorry, 8 years. And like part of what I need to do to recover from that is to show my body respect and heal and give it the things that like I think that I need. And for me, that was like investing in learning literally everything I could possibly learn about like nutrition and supplementation. And I started becoming like very mindful about everything I ate, started training again. And that's really, I think, the path that led me to like fitness in general. I didn't get into bodybuilding until like probably 8 years later, but it was
Mhm.
definitely like the approach of like healing like the mind and the body that first got me back into fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So you started to have respect for your own body and your respect for your own
Yeah.
health, which you put to the wayside when you're an addict. You don't think of those things. I look back and part of me, my journey, and I hate to keep looking at my stories too,
I
but
want you to.
just I did one of these personally out there. It was my first one I just did. If people look back at the channel, I had done one myself and just talked to myself and put it out there. But I neglected my body quite a bit. I had gotten sober 3 times on my own and would drop 80 pounds, get fat again, 300 pounds, 300-pound guy, drop 80 pounds, get back and forth. So I didn't realize how much I was neglecting my health and my body. And yeah, when you get sober, that's almost like a part of it, like learning to respect yourself, learning to set boundaries for yourself, learning that you're deserving. It's not selfish to say that you deserve basic things for yourself that you want maybe for others. Who am I to uphold taking care of yourself to someone else when I'm not willing to do it for myself? That's hypocritical and it's not constructive. So it's interesting because that's common. Everybody starts to learn like some sort of respect for themselves, whether that's physical or just
Yeah.
mental, because you can put yourself down all the time, never think you're good enough for things, and all those things are common in addicts. You see a lot of trends in addiction, and I think pointing them out is a way to break the trends and hopefully help the problem in the long run for somebody. That's part of our goal of talking is I like talking about this stuff because it just helps. It's going to help somebody. Somebody's going to click and hear this and say, wow, I can totally relate to Karina, or I can relate to Dave, or I can relate to Travis, or a couple other people I've done in the past on some of these episodes. And I think it's a good thing, and I hope to continue to do more of it. But I just got a couple other questions for you. Want to wrap up how you got to where you are today, because you still live a very interesting, different life as well from where we're leaving it
Yeah.
at. But one thing I always am curious, like in fitness, there's a lot of difficulty because you're always trying to break barriers or get personal bests, or you're trying to get to the next accomplishment. And I wonder with yourself, I've had this with myself, but have there been moments in your fitness career, whether that's coaching or your own competitions or powerlifting, that really tested your sobriety or kind of made you have
Mm.
thoughts that you look back at that say, geez, none of this is worth it. I was better off as a drunk? Because I've had those thoughts myself and I had to learn
Oh,
not to negative talk.
that's interesting. I think,
I can give you
huh,
an example. Like myself, I had
yeah.
at one point when I realized the time that it's going to be needed to invest in my physique to be a good bodybuilder, it's
Mm,
discouraging because we know it takes,
yeah.
it's not months, it's years, and it's for
Yeah.
some a decade when it's
A decade. Yeah.
which is I'm coming up on 5 years sobriety, which is I got right out and I was on a diet 3 days after detox and right back at it. And I've done a lot. I've accomplished a lot and I look much better and I'm happy with it. But there's been times where it goes, is this really worth it? Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes I was feeling better or it was easier to just pick up a bottle and say, screw this, I'm never going to
Mm.
accomplish my goals. Did you ever have any of those feelings or kind of question yourself on your better path rather than having the negative thoughts?
Yeah. So, but about 2 years ago, maybe shit, when was it? 2 or 3 years ago, I got super sick and I basically like my health deteriorated really quickly. In the course of about 5 or 6 months, I went from being like the healthiest I've ever been in my life to like not being able to get out of bed. Like quite literally, I could not like walk to the bathroom on my own. I wasn't allowed to be alone with my kids because I couldn't take care of them. I was blacking out almost every day, having seizures. I couldn't keep anything down. So I was like on IV fluids. I was like dying. And like doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I ended up getting diagnosed with lupus, like eventually. And the lupus, because it had gone like untreated for so long, had caused like a bunch of other issues. So I had like complete HPA dysfunction. And so all of my hormones stopped working. So
Hmm.
stopped producing like estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, stopped producing thyroid hormones, stopped producing cortisol. And to literally undetectable and to not have any of those,
Yeah.
like you feel truly terrible, like
Yeah.
truly terrible. And so until they figured this out, like I was miserable for probably about 9 months. I was bedridden and just like fucking miserable. And that was probably the worst, where it was like physically I couldn't train anymore. And I had watched like everything that I had just invested like the last 5 years of my life in go down the toilet, right? Like losing all my muscle, like just it fucking sucked. And it like crushed me. And that was like probably that's hands down the hardest time of my life. But it was like probably the time that where I was, what am I doing? Like I can just drink or I can just get high. And like that would be so much better than what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
That was probably like the hardest time.
Yeah. Yeah, but then you quickly realize that your problems are going to just be there tomorrow.
Yeah, then I'll just be dying and high. Like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so you go from drinking at 13 in high school, you get yourself, get good grades, but you still continue to drink. Then you start to have these scenarios with a couple accidents that you almost get into, a couple near misses and wake up calls, and then it takes a scenario where you maybe I'm wording it wrong, but let yourself down and your mom down and have a position where you just I'm sure disappointed in your actions, and that was your wake up call. You do a 12 step program, then you have some adversities through staying sober, like the sickness that you deal with. And where are you now? Now you're into coaching and you're a doctor. And what kind of doctor are you?
I have a PhD. So my background is in demography and sociology. And my like training, my methodological training is in statistics. So I do like data analytics, so Python, data, all that fun stuff, writing code. And so, yeah, how did I get here? I ended up going back to school and I got a PhD and got a good job and started coaching because I love bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I like love everything about it. And I'm also in like a good position where I understand how to read the like scientific literature. And so I got really into reading like all of the literature on like PEDs, all of the literature on nutrition and like training at science and stuff. And then I also realized that's maybe 10 or 20% of what matters. And so then I started watching like all the bro science videos and all that stuff. And I'm a student, but I guess at my heart, like I do love learning. And so I just consumed massive amounts of everything that I could about bodybuilding and got into coaching because I genuinely love this sport and love helping people. And so like right now I have a day job that I can't really talk about. And then I have this coaching business that's going really well. And that's really where my heart is and where my passion is. And maybe one day I'll be able to do that exclusively. Yeah, that I think that's the dream, right? That's the goal.
That's good. Well, you're certainly a
Yeah.
good coach, and I know you love bodybuilding. And you and I talk bodybuilding all the time, and you played a
Yeah, we
pivotal
do.
role in turning my wife pro. So that was quite an experience. So I can attest to you're very good at what you do, and you're very detail orientated, and you're open to the bro science of things and kind of logic and thinking about like anecdotal
Yeah.
responses, and then comparing that to like what we truly know on paper and what we truly know in the world of science, and just making a good middle ground and making a
Yeah.
good decision as a coach. That's one thing that, because some people tend to just lean one side of the fence or other, and that becomes a fault. They only get so far for so long that way. So it's good that I'm just glad to hear that you're doing better and you're really just starting to, just seems like it's only up from here for you now. You've got this addiction grasped. I would have never even guessed when I first met you because you have everything so
And
well
I
put
was
together.
tripping balls on ketamine and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. But hey, we all have good things in our past. I wouldn't change anything. It made me who I am. And there's some things I regret in a sense that you may be embarrassing or just ugly parts of your past, but that's your past. It's yours to own and it's yours to learn from. And we are the sum of all these things to a point. Now, just to help other people, a couple quick questions before we hop off is one thing I always like asking people, if you could say something. Let's do this. This one's funner first. But if you could describe yourself in your worst times with 3 words, and then describe yourself in the best of your times now with 3 words, what adjectives are you using?
okay, worst words probably let's chaotic, destructive, hmm, miserable.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
probably those three.
And then if you,
Um,
3 adjectives of yourself in the best state you are now,
content, optimistic,
which is great. That's a great one.
resilient.
Very good. Yeah. Optimism is not something that an addict thinks about very possibly.
No.
Like it's always excuse making. It's always things are going to get worse. And you're always making excuses, or you're just trying to like mask issues. You're never looking, if I work a little harder, something's going to go up. It's only good from here. So that's a good one. Now, if you could say something to the version of yourself at your darkest point, what would that be?
Ooh,
Maybe it's
ooh.
advice,
What
or
would
if
you?
there's some wake up call you had to tell yourself. If you had just a moment to look at yourself in the worst of your worst, what would you say to yourself?
Man, that's deep. That's
Yeah.
deep, Dave. What would
Make you
you
think.
say to yourself?
What would I say to myself is that I truly feel that you'll realize down the road that you deserve better and that you're meant to
Yes.
go through this shit. And there's positives that come out of negatives. But you got to
Yeah.
do the work. You got to pull the cart yourself. I'd summarize that, my discussion to myself in that couple sentences.
Yeah. As you started talking, I was like, you deserve better. That was like what came to mind. And then you said it. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. I think, yeah, like you deserve better. I also think like you were meant for so much more. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you prove to yourself. Look at you. You get a PhD. You're an admired coach, and you coach many men, which is not very common for a woman to do. in this sport to a point. There's plenty out there, but it's
Yeah.
way scaled to men coaching men, and you do an excellent job. I take a lot of advice from you all the time.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
The
No.
respect is mutual.
What's one last question here for you is what's one thing that you wish more people understood about addiction and the recovery process?
I think that what I wish more people understood about addiction is that I think like the vast majority of addicts are like genuinely like good people with like really good souls and really good hearts, and they're not intentionally trying to hurt the people around them. I think that there's like a lot of, I don't know, there's like a lot of misunderstanding about with people that don't suffer from addiction and don't know what that feels like, that it's like, oh, you're just a dickhead and you like don't give a fuck about your family. And that couldn't have been farther from the truth at any point in my addiction. Like I never wanted to hurt my
Hmm.
family. I was just sick and fucked up in the head. And I wish, yeah, I wish more people knew that and had some empathy for people that are struggling with addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of the older, and I'm not trying to call out like a boomer generation or the older generation, but that's tough for them to understand too. We look at kind of scenarios of mental health when it comes to like soldiers coming back from war. We used to call it shell shock. We know it as PTSD
Mm-hmm.
now, and we weren't so understanding just because of lack of knowledge to a point. So that's a good one. People have to understand that it's not our intent as addicts when we're at our worst to be mean, self-destructive, negative, nasty. All those words are so true sometimes to how we can act. And it's really kind of part of our mental. There is an issue with addiction that is mental. It is a mental disease to a point. We've noticed that the brain acts different for an addict than it does for someone who's not
Mm-hmm.
facing addiction. So those are all good things for sure. So this was the point of our conversation, was to hope to share with people and get them to realize that you might be in a really low hole right now, but you can definitely dig yourself out. And there's many of people, and I hope to share many of them to motivate others to do better for themselves. So that being said, Dr. Karina, just appreciate you coming on and sharing this with me, your conversation about your struggles and your addiction and really your resilience. You really made it through. Some people don't make it through. And that's why I
Yeah.
want to look to help others, because sometimes it's too late. Their life flashes by, or they have one too much of their drug of addiction and they're dead. It happens all the time. I can't tell you how many people I've had to attend funerals and buried. And
Yeah.
it needs to change for sure. So you can claw yourself out of some dark places for sure. And if you're listening to this and you're struggling or you've been there, you're not alone. There's others in this sport who fought the same fight and that are still fighting it. And I promise you're going to come out stronger on the other side. And I hope this down the road just gets people to be more open to talking about it, not hiding their feelings in, because that's what I was doing a lot of the time, was my feelings and my issues I was hiding and I was drowning out with alcohol. When if I had just
Yeah.
had a good friend to talk to or somebody that could relate or has been there and done it, like we've been there, done it, and got ourselves out of this, I definitely would have been better off. It would have happened a lot quicker and I would have sobered up. But make sure
Yeah.
you guys
On that,
follow.
on that, yeah, I was just gonna say on that note, if people are struggling and want to talk to somebody that's like my, yeah, definitely hit me up on Instagram. Like I'm more than happy and I would love to talk to anybody that's
Yeah.
struggling or had this experience or wants to talk about recovery.
Yeah, definitely. Same to myself. Steer you in the best direction I know how to, and hopefully get you some help or find a way to just tell you, what I would do if I was you, because I've been there in your shoes at one point. And I remember it vividly, even though I have a lot of blackouts. I remember a lot of those scars. They still hurt to a point. But I'm gonna make sure everybody follow Dr. Karina. I'll put her Instagram in the description below. Also, for reach out to her for coaching. She does a great job. She turned Jackie pro. She's been one of the best people for resources and information for myself, and very easy to get along with and can do you very well. And if anybody got something out of this episode, I hope that you share it, you post it, you talk about it, and send them our way. I'd be glad to help, as well as I know Karina will as well. Until the next time, appreciate you sharing, Karina. Until the next podcast, we'll catch all you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. This was awesome.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
All right, let me just turn this off.